My name is Amy Sturm. Welcome, first of all. And I'm not going to be moderating this, but I wanted to introduce our moderator, who is Leslie Love. Leslie Love is currently serving in her second term. She represents Michigan's 10th district, which encompasses parts of Northwest Detroit and Heidelberg projects, and Redford Township. Rep. Love's entry into politics began in 1998 when she worked as the campaign assistant for California Assemblywoman Marguerite Archie Hudson, and later that year as a field organizer for California Governor Joseph Gray Davis. Representative Love is a graduate of Detroit Public Schools. She received a bachelor's degree from Siena Heights University and a master's degree from Marygrove College and Wayne State University. Without further ado.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So great to see your bright and happy faces with smiles on them this morning. So that's good. And we definitely, if you were here at 9 o'clock, had a wonderful opening session as the executive director of the Heidelberg project put into context art and metaphysics and how the Heidelberg has come to evolve into this 360 complete circle. And so as part of this breakout session, I am honored to serve as the moderator. Again, good morning, and I am State Representative Leslie Love. And just to be clear, because someone asked me earlier, the Heidelberg project is actually not in my district. But how I came to be a part of this project is much like the story of Janine, who happened to wander upon the street. And I'm sure you've all been on Heidelberg. Anyone, raise your hand if you've been there? Yeah? Okay, great. All right. We're family. This is the unconference conference. Okay, this is good. And it just takes you a moment. And when I was on that block, it was, I want to call it during the heyday, when everything was up and everything was there. And it really was like, what? Somebody did this? It was so exciting. And I got to know Tyree Guyton and then Janine, and so many people who have come to be a part of their story over the course of years. And so I'm very honored to be asked to be the moderator. And I want to set this off, first to give you a little bit of context of me. I'm not just a state representative, I'm a creative. Before I ever, I'm full this morning, so excuse me, because Janine planted seeds in me, she doesn't know, so they're shaking around. But anyway, I'm a creative, from the theater. I come from the theater world, and I remember when I decided to run for office, well, I'm a creative, and I did stand-up comedy. Toured internationally, did BET Comic View, toured with Cedric the Entertainer, and my friends are like, well, how are you in politics? And I've always been engaged in the human condition. And I think artists in particular are uniquely aware of the human condition and the environment that they're in. And they have to, by nature, be in touch with themselves so that they, particularly artists, be able to tell someone else's story. We are being very real in an imaginary environment that's created on the stage, but we definitely are connecting with those emotions in that environment, in that place, in that time. And so who else but an artist to serve? An artist who is about the people and for the people to come into this environment and open up that window to what matters to the human condition, what matters to our humanity. And so I absolutely wanted to serve. I absolutely felt that there was a space for a creative voice. There was a space for a person like me to sit at that table and ask people to look, not look without, but look within. To remember our purpose and to be purposeful and intentional in what we do. So I want to just set up that context up before we get into this about who I am and how I come to this. So don't let the state representative fool you. I am a little cookie creative in the inside. I just got to dress up like I've been. So 32 years ago, Tyree Guyton set out on a mission to transform through art the community in which he was born and raised. Drugs, petty crimes, unemployment, and abject poverty dominated this once thriving African-American community. Armed with a paintbrush, a broom, and the discards of the community, Guyton systematically transformed 2 blocks into an outdoor living art museum that successfully focused an international spotlight on poverty and neglect. Interesting. This work became known as the Heidelberg Project, and today it's recognized as one of the most influential art environments in the world. And according to its guest books, the Heidelberg Project boasts over 200,000 visitors annually from over 144 countries, making it the 3rd most visited tourist destination in Detroit. Its educational and community programs span 5 continents. And according to a 2007 economic impact study performed by Williams College in Cambridge, the Heidelberg Project contributes over $7 million in revenue for the Wayne County region of Detroit. The Heidelberg Project's 30-plus year legacy has appeared in countless national and international news publications. Short video interviews and vignettes of Heidelberg and its leaders have been featured on over 500,000 social media sites. There's just a man with a paintbrush and a purpose. The Pied Piper of polka dots. And discarded and neglected and poor things. Discarded, neglected, and poor things. You know that discarded stuff, that stuff that we no longer use, and the neglected things that people have just not properly cared for. And I think it was on that foundation, is its origin stories, and from that organic, authentic beginning that did not seek approval or permission or acceptance, did the Heidelberg build itself and set its mission to change lives and communities through art. It proceeds with the belief that all people have a right to grow and flourish in their community using art and creativity as its essential building blocks. And it is upon this essential building blocks that in 2014, the Heidelberg Project coined the term Heidelbergology. Not biology, not geology, not physiology, not sociology, not psychology. You know how black people are, they gotta create a new word, Heidelbergology. But Heidelbergology is the living manifestation of all of those things. Biology, the study of the development and evolution of life. Geology, the study of Earth's structure, substance, and function. Physiology, the study of the body parts and how they function. Sociology, the study of the development, structure, and function of human society. And then psychology, the study of our mind and our behavior, our conscious and unconscious. So the Heidelberg Project put all of that together and said, here we are. And it is defined, and listen to this definition, as such. Heidelbergology is the study of discarded materials incorporated into the landscape and fabric of a community and the effects on that community. Let me say it again. Did you get it?
One more time.
Study of discarded materials. Discarded materials. Incorporated into the landscape and fabric of a community and the effects on that community. Sounds a little up there in the clouds. Let me try to use this analogy. A water bottle. You know those fancy water bottles that Fuji Water gives you, or Boss Water, or somebody's water, and it has a special sports cap that you can flip it open and squirt it like a sports jar, or you can turn off twist the cap off and drink it this way and put it on. It's convenient. That nice little 16 ounces of water. We don't make you carry around a jug or a big old water cooler, just a nice little cute little bottle. And it's useful, and it's purposeful, and it nourishes us, it quenches our thirst. In that little bottle of water. And we're happy when we have it. It's so cool, it's so convenient, it's really nicely packaged. And then when it's done, it's discarded. Maybe someone left it on the side of the road, and it's neglected. And over time, there's rain. Rain pounds on it, and it kind of curves out a little spot in the earth and nestles itself in that spot. And then the cars and the trucks and the bicycles ride by and they put debris on it and rocks and dirt and grass and weeds start to grow over it. And that once really cool, can I use this one real? Because this is a perfect example. This really cool bottle of water right here. Oh, that was so helpful when I could carry it around. You know, pop that lid, is now in the ground. Buried, neglected, forgot about. But it's still in the fabric and incorporated in that environment. It's still a bottle. And that bottle remembered when it was cool and sexy. That bottle remembered how much you wanted it, how many times you used it, that you filled it up with just your tap water instead of buying a new bottle because you still wanted everybody to think you were cool with your fancy bottle. That bottle has not forgotten its purpose. But somehow, some way, it's been neglected. It was discarded. And I think in parallel to how the Heidelberg project and the Heidelbergology says the same thing, we're still here. We are still interwoven and intertwined in this environment, and we still matter. And things build up around us. People tunnel under us. People build things over us and pave over. But yet that bottle, that people, those elements, those places are still there. I think in one of the presentations you'll hear that we're still here. Detroiters have always been here. We're still here. So Heidelberg has revealed 3 core principles that it has found to be true. Art is a catalyst, art is medicine, and art changes attitudes and behavior. And for over 30 years, the Heidelberg has served as that trifecta of catalyst, medicine, and change maker. But this is not a romantic story. This isn't Janine drives down the street, meets Tyree, they go to Paris, fall madly in love, come back, build a successful project, and voila, millionaires. No. There was much more to the equation than that. The Heidelberg was twice destroyed by the city of Detroit in 2001 and in 1999. It was set on fire 12 times by an unknown arsonist in 2013 and 14. And from the words of the artist, Tyree Guyton, he says, and you heard it this morning, you can't heal the land until you heal the minds of the people. And it is throughout its journey the Heidelberg has encountered a plethora of these challenges. And we'll explore in this session where those challenges come from. Is it from the people? Or is it perception and attitude, poverty and oppression, or culture? Or is it incorporated, or is it the incorporation of discarded, neglected, and impoverished people, places, and things? The fabric of our conditions, our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors eventually manifest itself in this very public way, in this expression. And the Heidelberg does not seek to pave over it, tunnel under it, or build around it. It's not clean, it's not easy, and it's not always pretty, but it is. And then it's just like us, people. And so I look forward to you hearing from our panel this morning, who will explore the societal challenges to Heidelberg Project, art as a catalyst for medicine and change making, and exploring new directions for a sustainable arts community using the Heidelberg Project. So without further ado, and I am done with my soapbox standing, but I just had to set up that context of where we are in this moment. So I will present our first panelist. Rolla David is a chief operating, come on down, Rolla David! Rolla is the chief operating officer of One Times Run, and a leading online publisher showcasing limited edition prints, original artwork, books, and exclusive pieces from the best known and emerging names in contemporary art. Ms. David is also executive festival director of Murals in the Market, a placemaking and public art program in Detroit's Eastern Market. Rolla has also founded and helped create Red Bull House of Art, woohoo, and currently sits on the board at the beloved Heidelberg Project. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Rolla David.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Leslie. It's going to be really hard to follow that, but I will try. So my name is Rolla David. I am, first and foremost, the COO of One Time Run, which is a limited edition print company that is just around the corner. We moved over here to the Island View neighborhood we moved here in January, but we purchased the building about a year ago, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. I also am one of the founders and festival directors for Murals in the Market, which is, if everyone knows, is the mural festival that happens in Easter Market every year. We just completed our 4th mural festival about 3 weeks ago, and we actually have one of our artists that was in our festival today. I told you, and I'm gonna dive a little bit about public art here in Detroit, placemaking, and how it kind of all connects to the Heidelberg Project, right? So, you know, I think that public art is really important in Detroit, and it's not something new. It's not something that just showed up. Public art's been here. People have been doing public art in different forms. We've got like the Spirit of Detroit. We've got the beautiful alfresco in the DIA. People have been doing and executing public art so beautifully here in Detroit for so many decades. But you know, whenever we talk about, my husband and I, whenever we talk about street art and the idea of murals, street art, installations, exhibitions, and we have people that come visit us from all over the world, we take them to Heidelberg Project and we're like, well, this is our first street artist. He made a strong, I don't even know how to like explain it, but he made such a strong impression and such a strong statement with his work and his activism through art. And we, in everything that we do, in every project that we do, we try to incorporate what that spirit is, and we try to incorporate that in all of the public work that we do. Yes, some murals are just beautiful and pretty, and they execute certain things, but some murals really do and say and mean something. Tyree has been an inspiration to that, as well as the Heidelberg Project. I've had a really amazing relationship with Tyree and Janine. You know, I was one of the founders, and I did build and create the Red Bull House of Art program. I moved to Detroit in 2011. I left that program in 2014 to go work full-time for my husband. And in 2014, I quit in October, and at the end of October, we had our first exhibit with Tyree Guyton. It was the first thing that I did with their organization. And working with Janine and Tyree, I don't think I'd ever met people in my entire years of work that were so dedicated and so inspiring and so convicted in exactly what they knew and what they wanted to express. They knew exactly where they were going. And I found so much inspiration in them and doing what you love and moving forward with it all the time. Yes, Janine to me is one of my mentors, and I think of her as that, and I love her dearly. I don't know if she's in the room. I don't want to make her blush, but there's always a yin to a yang. Tyree is so incredibly thoughtful and smart and creative, and everything that he does is with so much thought, and the two of them together really make something so powerful. And I've learned that by working with both of them. We have not just shown Tyree in our gallery, we've taken Tyree to art fairs, we've expressed and tried to take the Heidelberg story to different places and really kind of communicate the work that they do in this community. One of the things that also is very impactful in the work that we do is the idea of inclusion in different kinds of people in public art. It's not just for one kind of person. And when we do what we do in Easter Market, and what we've come to understand the power of public art is that when people of color are represented, when women of color are represented, when women in period are represented, when different kinds of people are allowed to participate in what you do and how they interact and engage with the art that's created, a lot of different people have to sit at the table. And a lot of different people have to be part of the conversation. And I think that really kind of folds into this new life of Heidelberg in 3.0. I think what's happening in 3.0, which I was asked to be part of the board here at Heidelberg about a year and a few months ago. And they're like, oh yeah, we'd love to have you on the board, and it'll be, we might give you a project or something. And, I was like, okay, that sounds great. Like, I love what you guys do. It's awesome. And they're like, we're actually starting to renovate some houses, and we would love you and to join Andy to be the project manager for renovating the Numbers house. And I went to the Heidelberg project so many times. My husband's been going to the Heidelberg since he was 18 years old. And we spent a lot of time there. We bring guests. But until I joined the board and I started to really hear some of these stories of how these houses were made and the stories behind them and the way that it impacted the communities, I didn't realize how deep and authentic that it was. So when we started on the Numbers house, they were like, we want another artist to finally put something on the street. And I was like, oh, but we want them to keep in mind, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who the artist is, we haven't really kind of discussed it, so I'll hold off. But we really want to keep the spirit of what the house was. And I was like, it has numbers on it. It's awesome, it's so cool, like it's pretty, it's whatever. And they're like, no, Tyree had painted those numbers for the neighborhood children and the people that lived in that house to teach them how to count and add. And those numbers were there to kind of help guide certain families in that neighborhood to do it in a way where it wasn't being offered to them in any other way. And art was being used to teach and support this family on this house. So people would drive by and the kids would learn how to count and do the numbers, and that family was still connected to Tyree and the Heidelberg. And Tyree was like, I made that promise to them and I'm not breaking it. He's like, I promised them that house would have numbers and it would stay numbers. And he said that, yes, we know that everything's going to change on this block. We are creating an artist community and an artist village, but we still have to keep the promises to the people that have been there for a long time. And to me, that was such a huge sign of this guy, these people, this artist, they're for real, right? They're obligating promises that they made decades and decades ago, where those kids, I just met some of them, they're not kids anymore, they're grown-ups. And he was so proud in showing them all of this other stuff that he's been working on. Jesse and I bought a building with Tyree and Janine just around the corner. You guys will all be there tomorrow. So they came over for a tour, and just so proud, and it's inspiring. And so Andy and I have been working with contractors and architects, and it's been challenging to say the least. I don't think people really understand what it takes to bring a home or a house in Detroit back to life. It's very expensive. It's very challenging in regards to code and things that the city is trying to make everything right? They want to make things back into, like, they want to make everything regulated, and they want to make everything perfect again. Not perfect, but they want to make things have rules again. And it's been such a ruleless, lawless place for so long, where people are just like, I'm going to do what I want. And so we have been so thoughtful and careful in actually going by the book in regards to the building of the space. Now, nothing that's going to happen in regards to programming or what the space is going to be by the book, because that's not what Tyree is about. He doesn't do things by the book, and we're not going to ever support that concept of by the book in regards to thought and creativity. But we are trying to do things right, trying to make it safe, trying to make it accessible to lots of different people. And I think that kind of change and that kind of moving towards a different direction shows the growth of what the Heidelberg project has become, right? Started off as a statement by an artist. It went off to be kind of a catalyst and an aggregator, not a catalyst, but an aggregator to the city of Detroit. and now it's a partner to the city of Detroit. And now it's not going to be just one artist's vision, but a vision for an entire community. The work that they've done there has impacted myself, my family, our organization. We've shown our Tyree's work 2 different times. When they moved out of their last headquarters, they had a building that was filled with shoes, and they're like, let's have an art show off the building. No one's ever done that. I've never done that before. People would walk around, they'd pick it, they'd take their shoe, they'd go home, and people were putting art in their cars, and they were crying. I can't even tell you how many people were crying and filled with tears because they never thought that they'd be able to collect a piece from Tyree, because he decided to let go of those pieces inexpensively. And whenever Tyree comes into a show that we've had in the gallery, it's like a rock star walking, because he spoke to so many different people. I'm constantly impressed and moved by how he moves the people of Detroit with the artwork that he does. This is somebody speaking as a collaborator, a dealer of his art, and somebody that I feel very honored to be part of Janine and Tyree's world currently, as we are in partnership with property. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about public art too. We do a mural festival, and when we did this mural festival, it was kind of, we were like, we've sponsored mural festivals all over the world, and we were like, we would like to bring this home. Actually, Tyree painted in our second mural festival, Gold Street. It's kind of there, the shed itself is moving, but he went to one of the if you guys know Mo, the shoe repair guy that's in the market. Mo, it's where Mo's shop is, and Mo was like, where can I get my mural? And Tyree went back and helped Mo out. And so our mural festival is a direct impact of legacy public art programs that have been happening in Detroit. We didn't just come up with this. This wasn't something like, oh, we did something so amazing. No, we did something that we wanted to impact our community and impact our arts community, impact our artists where we were, and spread veins through what we did. And our inspiration is 100% dedicated and part of the Heidelberg project. I'm going to show you guys a little video. I thought I'd just mix it up. This is actually a video that we did from last year's mural festival, not 2018 because it's not done yet. The festival is really fresh, but this is from 2017, and this really gives you an idea of our work, what we do, and again, it is really an inspiration of what the work that the Heidelberg has done over the past 32 years. So I'll let you guys.
Sorry, we're working on getting the lights here.
Murals, for me, serve as artwork for the community. It's artwork that is now in the collection of the community, so to say.
What Murals in the Market brings to the city and to this area is a breath of fresh air. Who doesn't like to see beautiful art? And for them to work with these local businesses, and these businesses donate their walls to beautify the city, I think is an amazing thing. Well, the feeling you get when you come into Eastern Market and you get a chance to experience these murals and see everything that's going on it's a feeling of pride. To be able to look at Detroit as a hub for art and a hub for artists is an amazing feeling, and I believe that as someone from this area, it fills you with pride to know that there are people working to get this exposure for our city.
As far as the city itself, I think it's an amazing place with amazing people. The people have been kind and tough, which is an interesting pairing of traits. I think the resilience of the Detroit people shines through. It's prevalent just in conversations, meeting people for the first time. The grit and overall aesthetic of everything is inspiring to me.
What fascinated me firstly about Detroit was how so much arts and culture has emanated from the city forever. There's a lot of creative stuff going on. There's an energy about Detroit. I like the amount of initiative takers, people that just kind of come up with dream projects and just see them through. I love that if somebody just wants to make something really kind of obscure, just a random concept for a store or a random concept for a gallery space or something, that they'll just do it. And I think it's because it's sort of unburdened.
I think Detroit is headed for a good path, but what I would like to remind people is that Detroiters have always been here. Detroiters don't leave. The people that makes and made Detroit special, we're still here, and the descendants are still here. So even though new people are coming in and moving, we're not going to be erased. It's more unified than separate. So I think the possibilities are really endless.
I think that murals in the market also is, with it being such a draw, I feel like it makes the city feel more inviting, to people who might not be from around here. And I just think that the energy that comes about during the festival is something amazing and something that any city could benefit from.
So yeah, that's just like a little, it's nice to hear it from other people, right? It's nice to hear it from Detroiters. I think one of the things and one of the concepts I want to leave everybody with today is Detroiters never left. Detroit has always been here. Detroit is a place where people have been creating for generations. Yes, there's new stuff that's happening and it's wonderful and it's exciting. But don't forget about everyone that's been here, grinding it out, waiting for their time to be here. When you talk to developers, when you talk to whether foundations for or nonprofit, I think the work that we need to really think about and focus is how do we still keep creativity thriving in Detroit. It doesn't mean building artists their new artist center. It means how can we help artists keep their homes? How can we have creatives keep their place of creativity? Giving them a place to express themselves and exchange ideas without diluting it and sanitizing it. Let's make sure that it stays authentic and real to what it was. As you see some of the artists that were from out of town, those were the most amazing qualities of what Detroit was to them. Tough and kind. That's my favorite thing that anyone's ever said. Michael Vasquez from Miami, he's like, it's the most interesting combination of qualities that people can have, and I think it describes Detroiters so perfectly, is that they're tough and then they're kind. And let's not take away those qualities from them and make them skeptical and jaded. There's there in city government, of course, but as we create and make new spaces for people or new ways for new people to come in, let's be really conscientious of the people that have been here. So that's it for me. Thank you.
All right.
right, get my notes. Now please welcome Andrew Strom, a visual artist, architect, and chair of Heidelberg Project since 2014. Andy's practice focuses on reshaping our cities and public institutions into more just, equitable, and interesting forms. Currently located in New York City, and is a selected artist of the 2018-19 Whitney Independent Studio Program. But his heart is always in Detroit. So please give a warm welcome to Andy!
Thanks. I feel like we're part of the comedy tour now. Legit. So, good morning, everyone. I am sort of allergic to standing at the podium, so I'm going to be probably looking/feeling uncomfortable, but I'm going to try to stick to my notes too. So, I wanted to start off by just kind of telling you where I'm going with this. And so, and can we get the board chair/tech guy? Okay. So where we're headed, or what I get to talk about today, which is really awesome, is the future. And I feel really honored to talk about the future. And what I'm going to talk about mostly is Heidelberg 3.0. I'm going to talk about it kind of at a high level, and I'm also going to give some very specific examples because as I've been navigating grad school recently, I find the theoretical talk to be awesome, and then I would love for people to give me an actual example, and so we're gonna go there. The first sort of critical and very clear example is Numbers House, which I'm going to unpack as we go, but just kind of give you a little preview. And then before we get started, I also want to tell you a little bit about an example of what I see as Heidelbergology and Heidelberg magic that happened this morning. So first, though, I want to get a sense of the history in the room. So by a show of hands, and then keep them up until you'll see, by a show of hands, how many people have could say that they visited the Heidelberg Project as far back as at least 5 years ago? Okay, so now keep them up. How about 10 years ago? 15 years ago? 20? 23? Okay, now everybody look at who's got 23. Okay, so I'm gonna go, and just for giggles, I'm gonna keep going. So remember the 23. 25? 30? 35. Okay, so you'd be lying if you said 35. Okay. I want to check, see who's going to stay on. Okay. Now I want to ask you kind of another question. So of those folks who've been out on the site, how many of you had a chance to actually sit down and talk with Tyree out on the site? And how many of you, when you were having that conversation, were like, finally, I can find out what this is about, and you walked over to talk to this guy, and then you realized that he was going to ask you questions the whole time, and he wasn't going to tell you anything. It's kind of the experience, right? But the thing is you go away from it feeling really excited. You're not sure what you're excited about, but you know you're excited. And what I think is, to me, that's actually a little bit of the magic and Heidelbergology, is that Tyree was never really setting out to give us answers. He was there to ask us questions, and he was there to pull out of us and himself. When he started, not speaking for you since you're in the room, he just started trying something. He just knew something was wrong, and he was just trying to fix it. And he didn't do it from a place of, I know the answer, right? And still to this day, we're still trying to figure it out. 2 + 2 = 8. So, from Heidelbergology, I'd like to shift slightly to Heidelberg magic, and it's my way of kind of explaining why I'm up here. So, the one piece of my presentation that I didn't know how to approach was, why do I get to be the one that delivers this awesome future news? And so I was thinking about that on my way to the airport this morning, and Janine's not in here, right?
No.
You're good. So last night I was texting people at the pig roast, and I was like, hey, and they were like, so where are you at? And I'm like, I'm not there. And I won't be there till tomorrow morning, but don't tell Janine. And everybody's like, okay, don't tell Janine. They didn't want to stress her out. And I had done all this like research about which planes actually make it from New York to Detroit. And I was absolutely convinced that taking a late flight wasn't going to work. So an early flight would work, and then there would be like one or two that if I missed it. And so I was like, okay. So I'm headed to the airport. Everything's great. I get to the airport, I'm 5 minutes ahead of time, which has literally never happened to me. Walk in the door, say goodbye to the Uber or the Lyft driver, and I go, okay, well, let me get my ID out. Oh, you are kidding me. And I don't know if you've ever tried to go from like Clinton Hill to LaGuardia in New York, but it's not a quick trip. And I was like, this is gonna be a problem. And so I said, okay, don't panic. Just walk back out. I hit the lift again. The same driver picked it up, and then he called me and he said, didn't I just drop you off? And we were literally talking about how he was so tired, he worked all night, and he was going to go home to bed. I was like, yeah, you did. And I said, oh, he's like, did you forget something in the car? I was like, well, I forgot something, but it's at home. And he said, let's do this. So he pulled back around, picked me up, and we headed back home. And I'm watching the clock. It took way too long to do the circle. I'm like, there's no way this is going to work. By the time we got to my house, it was 5:20. It was time to board. And I thought, okay, this will never work. And so we're on our way back. And actually, right before we got to the house, I was like, please, God, make this work out. Because when I do land in Detroit, Janine is going to kill me if I don't get there in time for the panel. So we get back, and obviously I made it. I made it by running through the airport, and luckily, I think they had started boarding, normal time, but I got there at like 15 minutes before the flight took off. So to me, that is an example of Heidelberg magic, and how I learned why I was supposed to be the one, or maybe not why, but that I was in fact supposed to deliver this future speech.
Heidelberg 360.
I was right, it came back around, literally. So anyway, so now that that's settled, I want to go back to the like 4 or 5 people who said that they have been visiting the site for at least 23 years. Can you raise your hands one more time? Okay. And then can we look up here? Oh, go back one. Just so happens that 23 years ago, Tyree and Janine were thinking about 2018. Because you see, this, dated March 1995, was the first time that what we now know as Heidelberg 3.0, which was then called the Cultural Village, was put on paper. So they have literally been thinking about today for 23 years, at least. And that's just when it was put on paper. So if you kind of zoom back out, one more. So this, at the time, was the map, and I apologize for the quality, but you wouldn't believe what we had to do to just get this. But back here, and you can't see it because the text is too small, but it talks about basically an artist colony at that time. Artist colony, artists in residence, artists who were meeting community needs. So it wasn't just about artists who were there to make work, to work in an aesthetic practice, but to work socially and to find ways of healing the community. 23 years ago. Way before that was the cool thing to do, right? So now there's tons of social practice, there's tons of people who are looking at things, there's Project Row Houses, there's Theaster Gates, there's folks out in LA, there's folks everywhere who are really trying to understand what does it mean to work as an artist in a social space. But this was happening, 23 years ago. So I just like to say that, and one of the things for me about this is that they didn't know how to realize it then, and they didn't maybe know that it would be 2018 before it started to really come to fruition, but they just put it out there. They said, this is what needs to happen. I don't know how to make it happen, that's your job. I remember the first time Tyree and I ever met, where I was a board member, because I got to first work for them as an architect, and basically Tyree said, well, here's what we need to do, and good luck. And I said, what do you mean, good luck? I just got here. But I learned, and his answer to me was Heidelberg needs to grow up. And I was like, okay, well then, I guess let's get started. So, can we go one more? Okay, so the future. So the future has actually been in progress for a while. But I think a lot of folks already hit on it, so I won't dwell on it too long, but we're now in partnership with the City of Detroit. We're also working with Lori Cultural Resources, and you're going to hear from Donna about the Eastside Community Network and its relationship with McDougal Hunt, which is our core neighborhood. And all these folks, including Heidelberg Project, are going to be working together to figure out where does Heidelberg 3.0 go. So again, we don't have it all figured out. We're in the process. We're figuring it out as we go. But we know that we're bringing together, the city on our team, Donna, who's got a deep understanding of how to work with communities and engage communities in processes, and Lori Cultural Resources, who's one of the internationally known cultural planners in the world. Cultural planner in Chicago, I think the Studio Museum in Harlem, but the list kind of goes on. But we've got this team, we've got our team, and we're getting started next week with a visit and a walk and a tour, and we're going to get from there. It's just going to skyrocket. So what does that mean, though? When we talk about Heidelberg 3.0, where do we at least think it's going? Getting back to Janine's notion of intention. It's kind of hard to see this, but the big diagonal, of course, is Gratiot. So this is an aerial of Heidelberg area. Gratiot, and Mount Elliott is doing it. That one. And the black rectangle in the middle, if you can see it, is kind of what's thought of as core Heidelberg, historical Heidelberg. And if you went to the events last night, that's our new building, soon to be new headquarters over here on the left. And then what Rula was talking about, where we're going to be tomorrow, is over there far on the right. And so we kind of drew a line and looked at some of the things in partnership with the city that they're trying to do with the Beltline, with some parks. And we've kind of tentatively said this is where Heidelberg 3.0 is going to go, right? This is where we're going to work this magic. So embedded in this, also, you kind of can't see it, but the lower left kind of white box is Numbers House, Dottie Waddy House, where Tyree grew up. And this is where it's all going to happen. This is not the magic happening, it's where it will happen. So that's Gratiot, that's Mount Elliott, that's the square, Heidelberg, right next to one. So, so anyway, this is where we're going to get down. So many things that are important about that. I think I touched on this a little bit, but when we used to talk about Cultural Village or Heidelberg 3.0, we talked about how Tyree's initial vision transfers into multiple artist voices. So this isn't about, really never was about Tyree, right? But he took on the brunt of the work, and now as he's trying to figure out where he's going next, we're starting to bring in other artists. And so the first one, as Rula talked about, and it is okay to say it, is Sydney James, Detroit muralist, who's actually going to start her installation on the Numbers House. And if you've been out to the site recently, you've probably noticed the Numbers House doesn't have any numbers on it right now. It's got all new siding, all new roof. We're already in the process of going there, and she's going to start her mural next week, so weather permitting. So we've had some fun with construction. This is not actually how the mural is going to look. She's actually tweaking it to add even more numbers and to tweak how it's going to look, but this is what we had at the time. But it is kind of the feeling that we're trying to evoke. And then on the inside, this is where it really gets kind of real. So this is how I can explain best where we see Heidelberg 3.0 going. So on the top floor, artist in residence and studio, we literally want to fill the neighborhood, both with find ways of maintaining affordability and maintain the folks who want to stay, but then also begin to bring artists in on a sort of a long-term residency basis, 1 year, 2 years, we'll sort that out. And then on the lower level for Numbers House is going to be kind of our front door. It's going to be our welcome center. It's going to be a gallery. It's going to be a space for Hala, who you'll hear about, Heidelberg Art Leadership Academy, who you'll hear about later, to do classes with students. And in the back, the steel structure in the back is going to be for the artists in residence to put on their installations. So this is how that's happening on the inside. I'm just going to go for it because we're going to run out of time soon. Just more ideas about how it's going to look on the inside. And that's kind of it. The one thing I wanted to do kind of lastly to touch on is that Labu is our architect who's been working with us, with Rula and I, and have been really great and have really helped us advance this. And what we see is that this is Numbers House. This is going to be us demonstrating where Heidelberg 3.0 will go so that people can understand it. We've been talking about it for a long time. But we want people to understand that this is Numbers House and that this is where Heidelberg 3.0 can go. That's it. Thanks.
We're going to move right along. I apologize that we had technical difficulties to the panelists because it makes us have to just present a little bit more quickly. But next up is Donna Gibbons, President and CEO of Eastside Community Network. Woo! Yeah! Has over 30 years of nonprofit leadership experience in areas of youth and family development, community economic development, community partnerships, and community education. Over the years, she has developed and implemented demonstrated programs, worked in partnership with a number of community organizations with the consistent goal of increasing opportunity, building capacity, and fostering growth. Please welcome Donna Gibbons. So, first of all, good morning. I'm probably one of the only panelists today who is not an artist. I'm a daughter of an artist, and I grew up in an art-infused home. When I was a little girl, my mother went to Wayne State and got her bachelor's degree in fine arts, and so I understand the importance of arts for the spiritual development of people. It certainly has been important to me, although I never inherited those gifts. So when I look at things around the arts, when Eastside Community Network looks at arts, we look at not just arts in terms of how, an installation impacts the individuals who are looking at that, but also how does this installation impact the community. So when you look at blighted neighborhoods, the importance of arts, you have to look at what's going on. You have poverty, vacancy, decay, abandonment, concentrated poverty, crime, and isolation. And public art can ameliorate impacts of these things on a community. Even if you don't bring in additional money into the community, public art can change the way a community perceives itself. And that's one of the things that Heidelberg has been working to do for years. But there's a need for resident-centered involvement if it's going to translate into being a stimulus for additional community development. And I wish I'm going to have to move a little bit so I can see my bullets that I have here because I'm a bullet speaker. So we developed this project, this concept around community development called Neighborhoods First at the Eastside Community Network that was formalized in 2016 after I came on as president and CEO. And the idea of Neighborhoods First is that when you're trying to transform neighborhoods using any medium, including arts, you've got to engage residents and center your work around the residents' needs, priorities, experiences, and perceptions. And then what the residents do is they bring that and you pair them with technical experts like artists who bring skills and insight and vision. And when you couple those things together, that's when you have community-driven change. Development can happen without engaging residents. It happens all of the time in the city of Detroit without engaging residents. So this is not to say that arts cannot happen inside of communities without engaging residents, but the spillover impacts of arts in a community, changing the way a community views itself and changing the perception of the community really requires more essential resident involvement. Because what you see in Detroit is you see in a lot of places development happening and the people living near development being unchanged or insufficiently changed, or some people being changed and many others not being changed. And we wonder why. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the art is not, or the development is not necessarily touching those who are here. And so how do you do that? It will happen. When you don't do that, economic development happens in silos. You have this neighborhood doing well, this block doing well, this project happening here, people not connecting. And you also have residents resisting. We have arsons going on, right? And that's a resistance. It's brawl resistance, it's criminal resistance, but it is resistance. You have vandalism that can take place, negative conversations that reach levels of city government so that you have city government pushing back against things that really should represent positive growth. And then the spin-off effects to capitalize on investments are minimal, and the people who benefit frequently are not the people who were there all along, but people who come in who are equipped and ready to benefit. Because if we're going to expect people to benefit from community arts, we've got to equip them with the skills and the strategies, and also make sure that their voices are incorporated in everything that we do. And so there's a lot of instances in the city of Detroit where the people that we serve at Eastside Community Network talk about new Detroiters, right? Now, Detroit has about 670,000 people in it. I don't know the exact numbers. We're going to count again in a couple of years. So there's certainly a need for new Detroiters, I'm thinking, right? Because we have a lot of vacant spaces. I don't think the problem is the reality of new Detroiters. I think the problem is the perspective that the voices and vision and preferences of new Detroiters are more important than the people who have been here all along. So when you start talking about community engaged planning, you make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. So I really want to talk because it's easy to talk about other people, what other people should be doing. But we've had to, at Eastside Community Network, try to figure this out ourselves, right? Because every time we go into a community, we are a community development corporation. We have a community-driven board. 8 of our board members, the 21 board members, are residents who live right in the community. 7 represent institutions, and 6 represent businesses. So you would think we had this figured out. But we, like everybody else, have had to learn how to improve on everything that we've done over the years to make sure the residents remain at the center. One of the things we're very concerned about is green infrastructure, is redeveloping the land around us to manage stormwater better, right? And you can do green infrastructure in a number of ways. You can make it aesthetically pleasing, or you can just make it functional and aesthetically neutral or unattractive. You can turn green infrastructure into parks, or you can just have these bioretention basins that people don't want anything to do with. So when we started off with green infrastructure planning, we started with this concept of pennycrest lots on Mack Avenue. Mack near Chalmers, we have a couple pennycrest lots on the Green Tee. We thought, wow, we have this vacancy. We can take this vacant land, connect these vacant lots, grow pennycrest there, harvest the seeds and sell them for biodiesel fuel, and we will therefore beautify vacant spaces and also put this land to productive use and remove blight. The thing about pennycrest is we never ask the residents or the businesses nearby, what do you think about pennycrest? That's one, and number 2, it's not beautiful, okay? So we did these pennycrest lots, and people were moderately impressed because we did remove blight, but there was not an ownership of it. We did a survey, and many people appreciated what we did, kind of, but there were other people, other businesses on the street who said, that's ugly. And so we learned from that. The second thing is that we did a nonprofit-driven Great Lakes Restoration Initiative where we took on 31 lots in the Lower East Side, and we converted those lots to all different types of green infrastructure. And we had, on the one hand, this group of people engaging residents, talking to residents about what they wanted, and on the other hand, people who are planning green infrastructure. And the people who are planning were not necessarily talking about to the people who were actually giving their advice or giving their input, and what we ended up was a project with uneven success and uneven ownership by people in the community because they didn't really understand. The third thing that we did was we learned from that, and we brought a group of residents together and we planned with them, connecting them to a landscape architect. And that was cool. I think yesterday we broke ground for our Hamilton Outdoor Rain Garden classroom. I'm on vacation this week, so I don't know, I'll show up next week to find out. It's been a labor of love just trying to get this thing to break ground, and right now it's kind of unattractive and it's across the street from a school. But the residents own it. And when it happens, it's going to impact school children. It was not my idea, although kind of, I kind of tried to steer the conversation in that direction, but when it gets done, it's going to be resident owned. But the most exciting thing we're doing is a Canfield gathering space. And in that instance, we put residents with landscape designers. I never entered the room where they had those discussions. They picked what they wanted to do. We brought residents together. Residents voted on 3 projects that we brought forward. They selected the project they wanted, and we're moving it forward. And what's so exciting about that is they have complete ownership of this project going in our community. It's going to produce green infrastructure. It's going to deliver on everything we want to see happen. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be placed where the residents want it, and it's going to be owned by the residents. So to me, that represents our growth and understanding how to use these tools and strategies to go beyond having a beautiful project and to create change inside the community, because when that's over, these residents are going to walk away and tell other residents, we need to do this. And now we're changing how our community functions. So, when I look at Heidelberg 360, I'm really excited because, first of all, my dad grew up on Charlevoix, and the house is apparently still there. I thought it was gone. So we used to drive through the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood all of the time when I was a child. And so knowing that Heidelberg is here is beautiful. I was here, I remember when Heidelberg first started. I was one of the people who drove through. I knew some people in the area. And so to watch it change over the years and to see the investment that's taken place there is very exciting to me. And then finally, we got funded to help plan redevelopment in the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood. In the McDougal-Hunt neighborhood, one thing that this neighborhood has that most other neighborhoods that are trying to redevelop and are this depopulated don't have is an outdoor arts environment, which is huge in terms of generating support, huge in terms of having some type of springboard to move from. And then you also have LORD coming in here, which is cultural planners, and you have planning that has already taken place in those blocks that we just looked at, so that when we look at planning in the area, we don't have to plan for the entire area. We can partner in planning and make sure that we're filling in the blanks and make sure that we're engaging resident voices. But anyway, we believe that the opportunities for 3.0 is to bridge historical divides between the project and some residents. There are many residents who support this project, and there are many residents who do not understand what's going on, who actively resist what's going on for all kinds of reasons. And you're never going to get 100% of people supporting what you're doing, but this is an opportunity to bring more people under the fold. It's an opportunity to include local emerging artists in training, design, and installation. There are people who live in this community right now who can do what City James is doing in the near future if we give them training and support. And they bring a vision and a voice that is so hyper-local that it really does help to connect to and improve what's happening there. And you know, also our young people at Eastside Community Network came up with a new project that they're calling Creative Vocations, because they are artists and they want to figure out how to use their innate artistic skills to make a living. And so we're interested in also creating creative pathways for this. We would like to partner, we are partnering with Heidelberg in the redevelopment planning for the neighborhood. And then we think that the co-creation of an art installation would be awesome, where people in the community are co-creating something that happens at Heidelberg that represents the history that they feel is sometimes overlooked in the city at large. Like so many neighborhoods, people think there's one black neighborhood in Detroit and that's Black Bottom and it's gone and that's it, right? They don't understand that our community in Detroit had many historical black neighborhoods, and McDougal-Hunt was one of them, and it's still here. And so how do we lift up that history, co-creating something in Heidelberg 3.0 that people own, and therefore they're pointing to neighbors saying, come see our thing. And when they do that, it can automatically lowers the resistance. And then I think there is a Bailey Park plan. There is a resident, Katrina Watkins, who had the vision to go out and purchase a bunch of land in the neighborhood. She's trying to turn that land into a park. It's open space right now. Is there an opportunity to do something with Heidelberg to create an art installation right at that park, so that not only can the community bring something into the Heidelberg 3.0 footprint, but Heidelberg can bring something into the neighborhood that's just outside of that footprint, where residents are trying to drive local change. So that's what I have, and I want to thank you. I'm really looking forward to partnering with Heidelberg, and I think that you'll be hearing more from us soon. Thank you. Thank you so much, Donna. Our final panelist is Craig Wilkins, architect, author, and activist. And the 2017 Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt Museum National Design Award winner and hip-hop architectural theorist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Craig Wilkins.
I don't have any slides, so you can get the lights up and you guys can wake up. Listen, I was tasked with sort of responding to what the three speakers ahead of me, but I think what I'd like to do is I don't want to respond directly to them. What I'd like to do is sort of talk about why I think each project that they're doing, or each speaker, what they're doing is important, and maybe important in a way that they might not even see it. Because when you're on the ground, you're doing the work. You're focusing on making your thing happen, whatever that thing happens to be. Every now and then you look up, you see the landscape, but then you can't look up too long because what you're doing might get away from you. So you're looking down again and you're working really hard. When you look up, you see other people working, you go, oh, okay, I'm not working by myself, let me get back to doing what I'm doing. But what I want to talk about is perhaps the aggregate of that kind of work. Today, the public common is under attack. Civility, community, sharing, equity, respect, these are dirty words. Things ascribed to those who can't, or worse yet, won't adopt the every person for his or herself mentality. Those who just refuse to, quote unquote, win, regardless of the cost or the consequences. In that effort to win, the question of public space is important. It's critical. It's in play. To whom does a public space belong? Who gets to determine the shape of the civic realm? The civic realm is literally where we come together and determine who we are as a people, who we are as a community, who we are as a neighborhood. And that public space is increasingly being commodified, packaged, and purchased. So those places where we have to actually engage each other, to actually have difficult conversations, to actually look at each other face to face rather than make comments on a computer screen, is vital. It's vital to our society. It's vital to our continued existence as we have known it. Doesn't really matter what side of the political aisle you stand on. One thing I think we can be somewhat certain in saying is that this particular administration is not interested in the public realm unless they can control it. So I think the public realm is incredibly important, now more than ever. The question of who has a right to the city, who has a right to participate in its pleasures, who has a right to define and shape those pleasures, is perhaps one of our most fundamental questions. Because the answer to them, as I mentioned before, defines who we are as a people, as a citizen, as a neighborhood, as a neighbor, as a person. Thus, in my opinion, public art, which often has as its goal to engage audiences and create spaces where people can identify themselves and wrestle with these kinds of questions, where they can put forth in a very real and visual way their ideas, their aspirations, their motivations, and interrogate each other. It is of vital importance. And don't think the fact that black and brown bodies are under attack in the civic realm is coincidental. It's not. It's not at all. But it's also the thing that public art brings, the thing that these public spaces, the artists, brings to our society is also very attractive to capital. Very attractive. It's also very attractive to activists. And depending on its location, those tasked with the titular responsibility of monitoring equitable access to the public realm, such battles can be seen as productive or destructive. It's not hard to see that San Francisco might respond differently than Chicago to the works we've talked about today. And Chicago might respond very differently than Detroit. So let's put something on the table here. This isn't really, I mean it is, but it really is more than a conversation about sort of public art and development. It's a conversation about culture and development. It's not whether art can spur development. That question has been answered 100 times over. It's really about culture for whom. Such contradictions underline the different reading of public arts, but it also suggests how its meaning is very, very important, and how these spaces have to be read as inclusive. And they also have to be centered on the right to name yourself. The right to identify and pursue what you see as a viable, just society. What the history of urban generation has shown time and again is that the use of culture as a foundation for revival and sustainable growth is both acknowledged, if not desired, but is also socially divisive. This is especially, if not uniquely true, for those who create place value through their artistic social practices and products, and they seek to benefit from those things that they create. What is specific here is art and culture and who gets to define each, and who gets to define who benefits from that. What good is it to create a viable neighborhood based on the culture and the creations of people who live there if they can no longer live there once their creations have been manifest? So this is the argument. This is the question. Who gets to benefit from what you create? And don't let anybody tell you that it doesn't matter. Because if it didn't matter, why are you bothering me? It matters. It matters a lot. And this work that these folks are doing in Heidelberg, it matters immensely. So let's have that conversation.
If I could have all the panelists please come up to the table. Now this is supposed to be the Q&A portion of the program, and we are running out of time for this session. Are there any burning questions? Okay, well I have one. I'm glad you all. So I'm gonna take the moderator liberty and be an unconventional conference. I'm gonna unconference the conference, and I'm going to present, instead of asking them the question, ask you the question. And so each one, I'm going to go down, and it doesn't even have to be in order. However the Spirit feels you. To answer the question that Craig put before you, is who benefits from the art you create? Go. Somebody answer that question. Who benefits from the art you create? Stand up, tell us.
I believe that the generation that survives after a community is rebuilt gets the benefit. The predecessors, you may say, the youth, the survivees of a city. people that matter. At the end of the day.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, jump up, go ahead.
I feel like the people who benefit from what you create are the people who appreciate it.
Ooh, y'all make me want to tag on that. Ooh, I gotta hold myself back. Okay, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm very different. I wasn't born in Detroit. I was born in Kashmir, which is a disputed state between India and Pakistan, thrown out of the refugees in our own country. But I've been living in Farmington Hills for about 20 years, so Detroit is as close to my heart as it can be. What I feel that everybody benefits if you create a hub, not who lived before us, not who lived after us. People who are most critical of your art are the ones who benefit the most because they see things which they don't see every day. They don't see the pain, they don't see the rapes, they don't see the torture that people go through just to get a bread on their plates. My parents worked hard, they raised me, gave me good education. I could come here, I have a master's degree from Lonsted in architecture. I worked as an architectural designer for 11 years out of companies, Redstone Architects, NSC Architects. I'm so proud to be from having lived here. I moved to Germany for 3-4 years because my husband's job demanded that, and I had to give up my job. I had to give up a lot in my life just to be able to be that supportive wife, and I don't regret that. I would do that any time because I have 2 kids. It was a great experience. But I saw these people in all different parts of the world who really face the same problems. They have the money, but the money is going on Louis Vuitton bags or Gucci purses, and they are worried I can go to the party next time with the same purse that I had last time. And then there are people in India where I was raised for 25 years who really live on $10 a month. Can you imagine the life of that? And of course in Detroit, you know, I've been here, I have seen how rich it is. But I'm just taking too much time, but I think everybody I know who is a critic of my art, I've been painting for the last 4 years, and I've had the opportunity to showcase in 10, 15 shows, and I don't think I've sold more than 4 paintings because nobody knows me. I'm not a white face, I'm not a black face, I'm not representing pain, I'm just representing beauty, which I think everybody should see in everybody's world. So I think all the critics, all the people who really don't care about the art are the ones who benefit the most. And then just uplifting the whole society together.
Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to say that we all benefit, and I'm going to break it down this way. The people who create, let's start with Tyree. He just agitated the soil to create this movement. And all the people who are working within the movement, their purpose is to work within that movement to bring about what we're doing right now. And then the people who will come after and view the beauty and see it through their eyes, just as the story she just told. She told it through her eyes in her pain, but everyone will see something. Everyone will hear something. Everyone will feel something. And that's what this is all about. So everybody is actually going to benefit from this at some point in time. We just don't know which angle we're coming from, but we will all benefit somewhere along the line.
Try to stand up. I'm going to talk later about artist-built terrains of conscience, which I just made up, but it's what the Heidelberg project is and so many other sites around the country and around the world that I've seen over and over that people benefit when they either allow themselves or just are completely changed by an experience in public space as people, and then they go out and are open to much different ways of living. It's kind of what I want to talk about.
Can I answer that question?
Yes. Not being an artist, but I just kind of want to add a little bit of nuance to the word benefit because I believe we benefit in different ways. I think we have an economic benefit. There's a spiritual and soulful benefit. And there is what I would call a community benefit. And I think what I'm hearing today kind of is intrinsic of, this spiritual self-benefit that when we come in contact with art. But in Detroit right now, especially with the landscape that we are dealing with, that my brother so eloquently stated, there are other kinds of benefits that's happening that that's inequitable, that is uneven, that also needs to be addressed. There's an economic benefit. People are getting money from what we create, and we ain't getting no money from what we create. There is, I'm trying, because I know we about to run out of time. I'll leave it there, because I got a whole nother thing, but.
Rudy, you wanted to add?
Well, I just wanted to talk, I love that question because we talk about it every single day, and with the murals that we do in Easter Market. So we created over 120 pieces of public art, and who does it benefit? We have to ask ourselves that question every time we make something there, because we are so scared of the gentrification of what that can mean for that neighborhood, right? And so over the past three mural festivals, we're like, well, it's benefited the community, and we've seen that. A lot of these properties are owned by very old people that have been established in that neighborhood for a long time. They own their buildings. They've been there for a long time. They've been granted. They're a meat packer or a wholesale producer or a trust that was set up by a family that's been there for a long time. And who are we benefiting? The artists have definitely benefited through the process. It becomes like a large billboard for them. They get opportunities. People learn about who they are and what their art is. But then this past year, there's been a lot of property that have changed hands in Easter Market. And we're like, well, who did we benefit? And then we are so questioning our work. And we get so scared that we're benefiting the wrong people or for the wrong purpose. And we know that we see that it's still benefiting the community because they're still doing their graduation pictures and their wedding photos, and people are still having the connection to the art and means so much to them. But we're also benefiting a situation where people are getting displaced out of their homes. People are getting moved out because the art was exciting. And it's a really scary proposition for us as we create more public art in Detroit. Who are we benefiting? And I really loved your conversation about making it holistic, where we have to think about the residents. There's not a lot of residents in Easter Market, but as we create more art, the residents, yeah.
Yes, but I want you to incorporate what you're about to say, and go ahead, real quick.
I was just going to comment on what you said and also what Greg said, that in communities that are changing, where we're putting in public arts, we have to be, if we want things to be equitable, equity requires intention. Because, money rules. And so if you want affordability to happen down the road, that means that even before you really start growing your arts community, you have to plan for it. You have to create permanent affordability in places. You have to find ways to infuse equity so that the people who are at risk have, you're equipping them not just with voice, but also resources, whether it's home repair grants or loans or building affordable housing or, whatever it is that you're doing to create that shared equity.
Okay. This is the last question. I'm going to pose it to the panel, and I recognize you, young man in the back. And if we don't get to your question here, they'll be around. But this conference is this exploration of the Heidelberg Project. This 360, this full circle, this 32 years of being here, like many of the artists in this room who have been here, who've done the work, who are creating for whose ever benefit. We create because we want to create. But how is it sustainable for the Heidelberg? How is it sustainable for artists who have been doing this? Not that it's always an outward giving, but that it's recognized, it's appreciated, and as Brother Orlando said, that we benefit.
I'd actually like to address that really quickly, because I think what the Heidelberg 3.0 and the relationship with the city, what they're showing is ownership is key, right? That we have to own our properties, we have to own our homes, so that we don't get displaced. And I think no one understands that better than the Heidelberg Project, where they've fought and they've stuck through their argument for so long about of trying to purchase these properties and been told no, with no given right answer, but they persevered, and now they're building a relationship and they understand how important it is to own your backyard and to own what you have. And I think for me and for other artists and art, what we communicate to people, that's the most important thing, ownership, and figure out ways to do it.
I think sustainability has to be built in from the front end. You know, you look at what are the economic opportunities in everything that we do. There's nothing wrong with looking at and being planful about economic opportunities. So if you're building these homes, how can we somehow not just have classes, but make money off of having the classes that we have, even if it's on a sliding scale? How can we sell articles, some of our artwork that is being produced? How can we maybe even rent out space to people so that they're helping to pay for things? But I think you have to be intentional about it. And of course, there's Heidelberg is a nonprofit, and so there's always the nonprofit planning process that looks at donors and making sure that every visitor who's coming to the Heidelberg is listed and gets the letter at the end of the year asking them to contribute and making sure that the friends become contributors on a continual basis.
Thank you. Andy?
I think I've said enough, and they've covered it. I don't know if I.
Craig, do you have anything to add?
Not really, not to that. I mean, I simply agree with the fact that you just have to own what you produce. You have to own what you produce, whatever that is, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's your home, whether it's your community, you have to own it. Otherwise, you know, what did Gil Scott Harrison, we almost lost Detroit, we'll lose it.
And I'll add as moderator, who is both creative and in the political world, who's participated in our arts advocacy days, and listen to artists say they don't know how to interface with politics, and everything is political. Our funding for public projects is very political. And I think it's counterintuitive that artists think they have a relationship or should have a relationship to those dirty politicians. But it's really a benefit to build relationships in that realm. So whether it's about land or it's about economics or access, those relationships are important too. And you'll be surprised at some of pathways that are open because of those relationships when you talk about ownership and being included in the conversation. Because as they say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Well, one of those things, just real quickly, because it's what Janine talked about earlier today, and what we're going to be talking about further today, tie your artwork to something else. Art and health, art and education, art and something else. Though that's.
We are actually done. But I was a professor, so I really do see everything that's happening in the room. Tyree, I'll let you close out with the last word. And young man, if you will, panelists, if you stay back so he can have a conversation with you. All right, Mr. Guy.
You know, as I sit here listening, one thing came to my mind. You got to know who you are, number one. And what I've seen over the years, doing it there in that community, there's a lot of fear. A fear of change, a fear of self, and a fear of government. Art is a business. And Leslie, I've come to understand the importance of learning how to juggle. But it starts with self first. You gotta know who you are. And you can't be afraid of the boogeyman. And you can't be afraid to push it. And that's what I have done. I've made some mistakes, and I will make some more mistakes, but I'm not afraid to push it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. The conversation continues. There's more breakout sessions. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you. And give it up to our panelists again.